am contractually obligated to ask about Bradley Beal's future.
Yeah.
It does feel like, ever since the report came out that Russ tried to get Bradley Beal to request a trade as well, which, by the way, Russ might be the worst star recruiter in the league. He tried to team up with Kawhi, and then Kawhi stole Paul George from Oklahoma City. Now he tries to get
Yeah.
Bradley Beal to leave Washington, and that doesn't work out. But it feels like, if Bradley Beal decided to stay with this team through that, it just feels like the noise is not as loud. But is this still a fluid situation given he is entering a contract year? Or do you expect him to sign an extension? Or is this just we should? I guess the question is, how likely is Bradley Beal to be wearing a Wizards jersey after this coming season?
Can I say like yes to every question you just asked? Because I think all of those things can be true. I think it is still a very fluid situation. Like he wants to win games. And if you're an organization that shows that you're not making strides to win, then that makes Brad look at the organization a little differently. Now, he said on record a few times and off the record, well, I can't say what he said off the record, but he has said in just conversation that, he wants to retire a Washington Wizard. He wants that jersey hung up in the Raptors and to be there for a long time. They're the team that drafted him on his birthday. It was a huge deal for him, and that's his life now. And they offered him the extension, which we all knew they would last weekend, last Friday, last Thursday. But that's going to sit there for a little bit, I believe. I think that's going to sit there until he feels as though we're moving in the right direction. Now, on paper, this team looks better than last year. But I feel like we've said that about this team every single season that Brad's been here. It's like this team looks better, and you're still, fighting to get the A seed. You're in the play-in situation. You're in the play-in scenario. I think realistically, you want to look at this team and say, okay, can we not play the best team in the playoffs? Round one, can we be a 5 seed? Can we be a 4 seed? Can we be a top 3 seed? I think those are very lofty expectations, but that's what the type of player Brad is the type of team he wants to have. He wants that to be matched. And I think him and Dame, major kudos to both of those guys. Like, they're a different breed. They're so loyal, but the noise that you hear now from the Dame side, and who's extremely candid about what he feels in terms of his future in Portland. It's the same thing with Brad. Brad wants to be here, but he is not rushing to sign anything because of the fact that you have to know that you're making the right decision. And you can get a lot of money everywhere now. Like that's the thing. You can get a lot of money everywhere. If you can get a lot of money and win, great. That's what you want to do. And if you do that at home, excellent. But so far, they have to prove that they're building a team around him. And Russ was a big swing, and it kind of hurt Brad a little bit because John was his dog. And then you have the season where everybody's down with COVID and Dobby shows up out of shape, and it's just a weird season. But I think all the things you can say, it's a fluid situation. Do I expect him to sign? Yes. Is it fluid? Yes. Do I expect him to take his time? Yes. Do I expect him to possibly look and take meetings at some point in time with other teams? Absolutely. I expect all those things from Brad because you have to at this point.
If you're him and you're looking at this team, can it be all about this season? Like, if let's say the Wizards are just like 10th or something around the trade deadline and they don't have a clear path to moving up, well, is he the type of player that might look at what they're building and say, I can at least see the vision here? Because, like, even if they have their best season, they're not going to be a championship contender,
right?
And so I'm wondering how that the long term sort of factors in with this. He is getting a little older based on NBA years. That how he sort of needs to weigh that.
It's crazy how he's in year 10 and he's 27. Like
he's getting older. Yeah, he's 27. But
yeah, that's crazy. And he's the oldest guy on the team. Like, that's another thing we don't talk. Like, he's the vet and he's 27 years old. But I think, yeah, I mean, it has to be. If I were him, I would look and say, okay, well, we have better players than we had last year. I think they're starting to realize what we need and address those needs. A new coach also, I feel like, buys you a little more time. If you're the Wizards and you're looking at him saying, okay, well, what can Wes do in year one? How do I like Wes Unseld? I think the relationship with Scott Brooks for a lot of players kind of soured, not negatively, but just you get a little used to playing under a certain coach and you're not really being challenged and you're not hearing a different voice. So you bring in a different voice and you bring in you flip Russell for all these different pieces. KCP and him are really, really tight, best friends. Like, that's a really big deal to him to play with somebody. I think that even adds a little, like, that's a little addition to the time on Bradley Beal, is playing with a guy who now is your best friend. That's something that he can get behind and staying in DC. But if they're 10th around the trade deadline, I'm going to have a lot to write about, I feel like, because that is going to be very disappointing on all fronts. You can never predict injuries or anything like that. But, yeah, I don't think anything's off the table if you're 10th at that point. Do you cut some slack to the roster age, or do you cut some slack to the first-year head coach? or you're like, man, this is a swing, and I thought we had something, but I don't think these guys can really play, and it might be time for me to take my talents elsewhere.
That gets really interesting if they all of a
Yeah,
sudden are moving him with a half season essentially left on his deal rather than 2 seasons or a season.
yeah, it's a tricky game they're playing.